Rabbi Isai. So, with this, like I mentioned before, that really in Likkutei Sichos there's actually, you want to say Le'ilu Nishmas again? And so on Shabbos Hagadol is actually 4 different Sichos in Likkutei Sichos that speak about the topic of Shabbos Hagadol. Why it's on Shabbos and why it's not in the middle of the week, and what's the significance of the 10th of Nisan, and what's the significance of it being on Shabbos, and why does it go by the days of the week and not going by the days of the month like all Yomim Tovim. Actually, one of the footnotes over here is going to point out the actual differences, which Sikha talks about what. This Sikha is primarily going to talk about the significance that all the other Yomim Tovim are established via the day and the month. It has to do with the month, the cycle of the month, what's called the lunar cycle. That's what Yom Tovim have to do with. When it comes to Shabbos Hagadol, for some reason, the event that occurred in Shabbos Hagadol, it has to do with the weekly cycle, the solar cycle. Essentially, the Rebbe is going to connect it with the weekly cycle has to do with the natural cycle of events. It's nothing new. Every single day the sun goes up and the sun comes down, and everything goes in a normal cycle of 7 days, etc. When it comes to the month, when it comes to the moon, it's called Chodesh. Why is the month in Hebrew called Chodesh? From the word Chidush. It's something new. It's a renewal. Every month we have a renewal of the moon. So this renewal shows on something that's really outside of the norm. And that's the point of Yom Tovim are primarily things that are from outside the norm, outside of this world. And what we're going to explain about Shabbos Hagadol is, with the miracle of Shabbos Hagadol, it's still part of the world itself. Let's see it inside. We're not going to read the titles that they inserted over here. Benegel Shabbos Hagadol, concerning Shabbos Hagadol, literally the great Shabbos. Shenikval Zeichan Nes Sheisrach Lefnei Yitzias Mitzrayim B'Yom Asiri B'Nissen Shechal Oz B'Yom HaShabbos. Then it actually came out on Shabbos. Not every year does the 10th of Nisan come out on Shabbos. This year the 10th of Nisan is on Monday. On Sunday, Monday. When the Likud came out, not when the Rebbe said the Sikha is actually from Tavshin Mem Gimel, but when the Likud came out, when they gave out the Likud the first time in 770, after the Rebbe was Magia, it was Tavshin Mem Vav, was also came out that year, the 10th of Nisan, was on Shabbos also. But still in all, we don't always celebrate the Nes on the date, we celebrate it on the Shabbos. Yadu HaShayla, it's known, Madu HaNikved Zkaron Yom Zeh, L'Yom B'Shavua HaShabbos, V'lo L'Yom B'Chodesh Asir B'Nisan, K'derech Shenikvu Kol HaMoedim. Has brought down in many places this question. The Tur talks about it. The Mefarshim on Shulchan Aruch talk about it. The Alter Rebbe talks about it. He brings in the Magen Avram about it. And there's actually some of the other sikhs actually compare the different approaches of in general, the Rebbe like categorize it 2 separate nisim. But we're just going to speak about what the Alter Rebbe says. V'adrabim Nes Shel Shabbos Hagadol. Hayakashem lekichas asel lekarban Pesach. Lekicha shenikva betzivui Hashem liyom b'chodesh. Other dates on the calendar when we actually establish a Yom Tov. Let's say Pesach. All it said is that be'etzem hayom hazeh yotzav bnei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. And then he says later, you know when it happened? It happened on the 15th of Nisan, and therefore from now on, the 15th of Nisan is a Yom Tov. But there wasn't like a emphasis that, on the 15th of Nisan we will go out of Mitzrayim. When it comes to actually the taking of the Karban Pesach, which took place on Asirim and Nisan, it actually said in the Pasuk, in the 10th of this month, you should go ahead and take the sheep, and everybody should prepare it for the Karban Pesach. So it's specifically in the Torah, the event that we are marking is connected with the day of the month. Because Chodesh Hazav Yichol Goyim Mevim Kain, Kvias Yom Zikaron as Bevadei Hoisetz Richel is Kshura in my Yom Bechodesh Oid Yoser Masher Kvias Kol HaMoedim, even more so because it had this type of advantage and quality. At least one page you'll have. But you should have it on your phone, by the way. Maybe it's a Torah Shal Magen Avram. Lafisha basara benissen mesa Miriam the cover by tinus kishachal b'chol. So that's the reason that's given. They didn't want to establish it on the day of the month because the day of the month is actually a sad day. It's a day when Miriam passed away. So we instead established it on the day of the week when it occurred. But the Rebbe says there's a very classic rule that when something happens, it must be connected to the matter itself, not for a side reason. Ach mikivin shekol in yonei ha-Torah. And betachos hadiyuk mistaber loymar shezeh shekov was the karna nes l'yom b'shavua v'shinu miderech shenikvu kol ha-meyadim. It's completely different. No other Yom Tov is established by the day of the week. Because Miriam passed away on the 10th, and that's why you don't want to make the Nes commemorate on the 10th. There's something about the week and the dates of the week that has more of a connection than it has when it comes to the days of the month, specifically when it comes to this Nes. All the other Nisim that occurred, the Nisim that occurred in Pesach and Nisim that occurred in other Yom Tovim have to do specifically with month. He doesn't get, like I said, he doesn't talk over here about the day of the month, he talks about the concept of month. Masha'enkein, this Nes has specifically to do with the week. U'b'doim el'bevur, this Yom Tov Sharoshan Shechalis B'Shabbos, Boy Ein Toikim B'Shofar, B'Medina Mechutz L'Migdash. In other words, outside the Beis HaMikdash, we don't blow shofar when it comes out on Shabbos. Mishum Gzeira de Rabba. What does that mean, Gzeira de Rabba? Gzeirasi shal Rabba, Mechshash l'tiltal ha-shofar b'shas Rabbim. Rabba explained the reason why. It's not Rabba created the Gzeira. It's already in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was before Rabba. Rabba was Namoira. But rather, Rabba explained that we were worried that he would carry the shofar. Shatam hapnimi lakach she'ein toikin hu loy machmas gzeiras Rabba kishala atzma she inyan tzdadi el mishum shebi Yom Tov sharoshan shachalis b'Shabbos ein nidrish kol kach mitzad etzma inyan lizdakl tkiyas shofar. In the Rebbe Sichos and many Mamarim, starting from Mamarim of the Alter Rebbe, it's explained that really there's something about shofar and Shabbos that they are redundant. I'll just give you just one point what this means. It says we do not put on tefillin on Shabbos because tefillin is a sign and Shabbos is a sign, and every Yid needs to have two signs. One sign is the Bris Milah, is called a sign, and the other one is the tefillin. But on Shabbos, he doesn't need a sign of tefillin. So therefore, Shabbos itself is that sign. In a spiritual way as well, Mamar Chassidus and Sichos Rebbe explain that what the shofar accomplishes on Rosh Hashanah, when Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, Shabbos accomplishes. So in other words, there is a specific reason having to do with Shabbos and having to do with shofar, that's the reason we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos. Similar to that, the Rebbe is going to say, it's not just for a side reason because Miriam passed away, that because of that we don't have the Yom Tov or this miracle established on the day of the 10th of Nisan, but there's something that has a deeper connection of this Nes with Shabbos other than just the fact that Miriam passed away on the 10th of Nisan. I want to learn next week, if possible, a sikh where the Rebbe actually addresses something that has to do with this year. The Rebbe says the same reason, I mentioned this before, the same reason that you don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah that comes out on Shabbos, when Pesach is like this time, Pesach is Friday night, you shouldn't be allowed to eat matzah for the same reason. The Rebbe goes through a whole bunch of reasons, al pinigla, then he explains according to Chassidus that this idea that we just now said doesn't apply by matzah and Shabbos. They don't replace each other. But we'll leave that for next week. Ois beis. Havonas hashachs ben nesel Shabbos Hagadol lekvias yimei hashavua tluya kemuvim betam apnimi lekach shekol hamoyedim nikvu lefi yimei hachodesh dafka. Why taka? What is it about Yomim Tovim that have to do specifically with days of the month? Ha'hevdol b'yimei hashavua yimei hachodesh yimei hashavua shivas yimei bereishis v'abriya kshurim im abriya atzma sheishes yomim asa Hashem as hashamayim v'sa'aretz over yom hashvi shavas v'ayinafash. So therefore, all the 7 days of the week have to do with creation. They're part of the natural order of things. They have to do with nature. They have to do with teva. The Rebbe in the brackets is going to say now, but hold on 1 second. The actual creation was only the 6 days. The 7th day, the Eibishter rested from creation. Why are you telling me all the 7 days of the week is part of the natural order of things? So he says in the brackets, Ki alaf shebiyem shvi Shabbos vayinafash, ach hamenucha atzma hi chelek memaise bereishis, ukemayim chachamenu zal shal achrei shesim bereishis haya olam chaser menucha v'bas Shabbos bas menucha. Hamenucha b'Shabbos ba efika shlama l'mitziusa shal ha'olam. It's part of something that the world needed. Just like the world needed trees, so the Eibishter created trees on a certain day. Just like the world needed animals, so the Eibishter created animals on a certain day. The world needed rest. So when did the Eibishter create rest? He created on Shabbos. Comes out that Shabbos is also part of the creative process, part of the natural order of things, part of Seder HaOlam. L'umma zois in Yonish al Chodesh ba me'ucher yoyser. Kedavar ha-yoyser ha-safa v'ili b'briya k'maymer chachamenu zal mishabachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamai kava b'Rosh Chodashim. So the Rebbe has a very interesting deal. You see the emphasis on the word mishabachar. What does it mean, mishabachar? There is the thing itself, the way it exists. And then there's the way I choose something. And by choosing it, I give it an importance and a value that it doesn't have on its own. There's the world. And then there's the Eibishter being boicher in the world. Ha'inyan shel Rosh Chodashim einoi kashur im matzav ha'olam etzad habriya atzma. Ela b'kach shebachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamai. Davar ha'moira al his'alus noisefes shenifala ba'olamai. V'hevdel zeh mebchinas ha'toichen shel ha'shavua v'achodesh kashur lahevdel hakayim ba'agdora habsisis shel shavua v'chodesh. Yemei HaShavua kshurim im halach hashemesh. Shiva pamim we have. That's what the week is. It's a cycle of 7 times. Vayer vayvoiker happens. V'yimei HaChodesh im halach halavana, the lunar cycle. Ba'oiru halach hashemesh. Ein shinuyim davar adoym al anhaga ativus shemitzad habriya. Shi be'ofen shel lo yish boisu betmidius lo shinui. That's the way the sun works, and that's the way nature works. Nature is constant and consistent. You can rely on it in all the aspects of nature, in the rules of nature. There's no exceptions to the rules of nature. If I drop something out of my hands, it's not that 99% of the time it's going to fall, and 1 out of 100 times it's going to fly up in the air. No, nature is constant consistently. Just like the sun will always go up and will always come down. It will go down in the west, it will rise in the east, and that is nature. Nature has this consistency, this order, this constant work. The umazois oir halavana mischadish b'chol chodesh. Zeu apirish hamilah chodesh meloshen chidush. V'zambaramas al hisafa v'chidush bebriya. Not just is there the idea of generally the concept of just the chidush of levana, but it teaches us in general the whole idea of creation is in the way of chidush in the creation. Over here, he doesn't bring down this concept, but in more barichas and many other places he speaks about that says that the nations of the world, they follow the solar cycle, they follow the sun, and Yidden, they follow the moon, the lunar cycle. Because this idea of bringing the Chiddush into this world, bringing into nature, higher than nature, that's what the Yidden do. That's what we're here for.
What connected the sun with the week? It's connected to the daily.
Right, but the fact that you're making it a weekly cycle has to do with what the Eibishter did over 7 days. So the fact that it's, you're right. If you didn't know about the story of Maisa Bereshis, you could say, there was actually people that wanted to make a 6-day week, an 8-day week. They experimented. It never worked out. It's a whole different discussion. But the point is, the Al-Pi Torah, we're told, the Lepoil, 7 days it took, like the Eibishter, to set the weekly cycle into place. So really, it's always that idea of the consistency of nature, the consistency of Teva, is over the 7 days of the week. This is the question that we asked in the second part of the Sikha, why were Yom Tovim established by the days of the month? Why Taki wasn't it established by the days of the week? Let's say if they went on Mitzrayim on a Thursday, I think it says. So that, yeah, if this was miracles on Shabbos, so they went on a Thursday. So every Thursday we should have maybe a mini Pesach. I don't know. Let's make it according to the days of the week, but it's not that way. That's it. Every Thursday night for bringing. Now we know why there's a Thursday night for bringing. So he says, "Mishum she'inyanim she'mayid v'yam tevhum his galus miyuchedes shel lakus shel amayla miteva olam v'lachein hinam shayachim l'me'ach chodesh miloshen chidush." It's something new. It's something out of this world. Ois gim al pi zeh yuvan gam madu hanes shel Shabbos Hagadol kosher dafkim yimei hashavua. Now we need to understand this by looking what actually happened Shabbos Hagadol. We haven't yet spoken about this at the beginning of the Sikha. We just said, everybody knows Shabbos Hagadol and it wasn't established because of Miriam's passing, but what exactly happened? Now he's going to talk about it. Zevach Pesach ul Hashem sheyareg b'choyrim Mitzrayim. So the b'choyrim got scared. Holchu b'choyrim etzla b'seim vel pari levakish mehem sheyishchos Yisrael v'loy rotzim. V'asa b'choyris imam mulchama. The b'choyris themselves went to war against their own families, against the rest of the Mitzrayim. V'hargu harbe mehem v'zel shekosov l'makim Mitzrayim biv'choyreim. The Mitzrayim themselves suffered from the b'choyris. The b'choyris themselves attacked the Mitzrayim themselves. By the way, like I mentioned before, there's other ways of learning what was the miracle over there. The Torah says a little bit differently, that the B'chorim had to hold their tongue and they could see the Yidden take their Avodah Zarah and they still kept quiet. That was the miracle. And like I said, the Rebbe in another Sikha speaks about the difference of the Alter Rebbe's approach and the Torah's approach, etc. Tir Einoi meshakif inyan hachoyreg midarke atava. Ha'uvda sheb'choyr Mitzrayim heminu b'divrei Yisrael sheyareg Hashem b'choyr Mitzrayim ein pella klal. There was enough history already. They've been going through the Makkahs, according to Rashi, was a series of 10 months, because every Makkah was 3 weeks of warning and 1 week of a Makkah. So it's already almost an entire year that the Mitzrayim saw that you don't start up with the Yidden, and Taka, the Shibud already stopped since the Makkahs began, says the enslavement stopped. So they knew that when Moshe Rabbeinu comes and says something, when the Yidden says something is going to happen, you got to be careful over here. So the fact that the B'chayers believed them, it's no big miracle. Adrab, the Pella was the other way around. Why didn't the rest of Mitzrayim listen to the B'chayres? That was the miracle. The miracle was what? That the others didn't want to listen. Because their lives were in danger. It wasn't just that they were said, the B'chayres would get this, the B'chayres would get... It was either they'd be for sure 100% dead, or maybe if they won the war, they'd let the Yidden go before they were killed. So who wouldn't make this choice? Which B'chayr Mitzrayim would not go to war based on the evidence and attack the rest of the Mitzrayim to let the Yidden go out? So the Gam avur b'nei Yisrael lo yehei b'kach neis goli hatzol v'yishua ma'golos Gam la'achar hanes shel ha'makim Mitzrayim b'chayreim. What happened? The Yidden were still stuck in Mitzrayim. Him lo yachul latzis ma'golos. So nothing really changed from the Yidden's perspective. When the Mitzrayim went, the B'chayres and Mitzrayim went to war against the rest of their families, did anything change for the Yidden on the ground? No. They were still stuck in Mitzrayim. So both there was nothing miraculous about what the B'chayrim did, and there was nothing miraculous happening to the Yidden. Therefore, ma eifoi niflai de nazeh, loy haya kan inyan shel shidud hateva, Nature was not destroyed. The rules of nature were not uprooted. Ki im sha'teva atzmo yishtane me'elov. Usually the example given for this is the miracle of Purim. Purim, where we learned about this as well, and Purim there was nothing supernatural. The queen was killed, and another queen came, and then Haman died because Esther told Achashverosh. Nothing seemed to be, there was no miraculous thing. Haman didn't all of a sudden drop dead in the street, Vashti didn't all of a sudden drop dead, etc. Everything was normal and with a Seder Mesudar. But the Rebbe says in the footnote that even by Purim, once you looked at the different events, you could see Hashem's hand over there. In other words, if you looked on every event individually and you saw this happen and that happened and that happened, they all look natural. It's like the Rebbe was saying about, let's say, the 6-Day War. So if you look at the 6-Day War, yeah, we shot and this guy got shot, so that soldier died and my soldier survived. But if you look in the big picture, what was going on? There was all these nations, and you see that even though there was no technically miracles, but it was all Yad Hashem. In Purim also, if you look at the chain of events, the way they lined up each one after the other, because first of all, Vashti was killed. The second thing is that Haman, and the third thing is that Esther got picked of all the other people. All these different things lined up very neatly. It could have gone, just one little thing would have gone out of the ordinary, the whole thing would have fallen apart. So there had to be a lot of unusual things lining up. So you see the Yad Hashem. But over here, you don't really see it to such a degree. So it's even more natural, even than the Nes of Purim. So it says, Tmuras matzav by teva mitzrim hulis nagir l'kedusha. That's the natural state. Bo b'choyrim mitzrayim. The Rebbe says, b'choyrim also means the powerful ones. We see a lot of times in Tanakh that the word b'choir literally means firstborn, but it's also a concept. Because first of all, in general, the b'choirim in the olden days, they were the leaders. They were like the heads of the families. That's why they got pichnaim. It's a whole bunch of things where the b'choir was like in a prominent position. They were like the army officers. They were like the generals. It was always the firstborn. And b'choir also used in Tanakh a lot of times to indicate the powerful, the strong ones. So when we say the b'choirim Mitzrayim were there, and they were the toikif, in other words, they were the power of Mitzrayim. Uba'ofen tivi bitlu es Mitzrayim lamakim Mitzrayim b'vchareim. L'chein nezeh kosher yimei hashavua davke. Why? Mishum she'inyanehu lo yosafa v'chidush b'darga anaylis miteva ha'olam. It wasn't something supernatural that came about. Kim l'shanes es ha'teva atzmoi. It was changed. The Rebbe says also in the footnote a beautiful concept. Whenever we have miracles, so we celebrate. And when we celebrate, we have special mitzvahs. So comes Pesach, you have matzah, you have maror, you don't eat chametz, and you have carbon Pesach in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, and you have the 4 cups of wine, you have the Agad, you have all different types of things that you do to mark it. Shabbos Hagadol, except for the reading of the Avodah Mayinu, it's not like a major thing. There's nothing really that we mark it. We just call it Shabbos Hagadol. Because the whole point of Shabbos Hagadol is that it's still part of nature. It's not something outside of nature.
We do the drasha.
So we have to make sure that the drasha is a longer drasha. Because that shows this idea of that its nature itself became a totally different level. Oizdalt. Im yosh benesel Shabbos Hagadol loy inin shel shidud ateva afal pikein davke nes ze nikra nes gadol umetam ze nikras gam Shabbos Hagadol, like it says al shem the nes gadol. Why? Based on what we just now said, why do you call it gadol? The whole point was it's part of nature. Nature itself changed. So why do you call it gadol? V'hezber l'kach ketzad bo de bitui boy from boil tabli gvul. Gadol shal Kadosh Baruch Hu davke bepula ala teva atzmai. But the Eibishter is not limited by nature. In other words, he doesn't have to have a choice, either this or that. Either you let nature run its course, or break nature. The Eibishter can show you that he runs the world even while nature is running its course. That's the true gedula of Hashem. That's the gadol. Dafke v'pul teva atzmai ad l'shinui hagoyim lakach shebeteva ha'olam k'fi sha'olam misnaig lefi gidrei ha'teva yenikar ki lo'olam chazdoi. We say lamakim mitzrayim bivchoreyim ki lo'olam chazdoi. And there's actually a pirush he brings down in the footnote. Ki la'olam chazdoi means that his chesed is in the olam. It's to the olam. The Hashem's chesed it becomes part of the world itself. Not that it has to break the world, it's within the rules of the world. God lavai mahul ma'od be'ir Elokeinu. Ein Masayhu gadol kishu be'ir Elokeinu. He's in the city, in the physical, in the world. Mashmas hadvarim, havaya means higher in the world. Why? Because havaya shepirushay haya v'yeh ke'echad. Past, present, and future being together, not that he is in the past and he was in the past and he is in the present and he will be in the future, but they're all together. That whole idea that all the three things are together, that's totally beyond nature. That's totally l'mayl mateva. Hu oifen hanoga nisis shalamayl mateva. Elokeinu, on the other hand, is Shem Elokim shehinoi begematria hateva. Shem Elokim, spelled out with a hey, not with a kuf, is begematria hateva, nature. Ein Masayhu gadol kishu be'ir Elokeinu. When is the Havaya, the Gedula of Havaya? When it's in nature itself. Who Chodesh hanhagativis is from Shem Elokim. Ve'ein Masayhu gadol masa Shem Havaya hinui gadol kishu be'ir Elokeinu. K'loimar b'anhagen nisis apel shidu de bitla teva loy nikar kolkach gadol ketzad Havayu gadol. I gave once an example for this. You have somebody playing chess with someone else, and he owns the chess set. He says, listen, I'm losing, it's my game, it's my pieces, we play by my rules. I want to move a pawn like a queen, you can't stop me. I want to move a king like a queen, you can't stop me. That's not a chiddush, that's not a big deal. The chiddush is you could be losing seemingly, and still, in that loss itself, you could use the rules of chess itself and defeat the other person. That's the chiddush, the God lavaya, just to bring it down the very balabatish explanation. In the rules of nature itself, you bring out the gedul of Hashem. Davke kasher shem havaya mislabish shem Elokim umishanes hanhogas hateva atzmei shagam sham yeh nikar ketzad le'olam chazdei. In the world is the Eibishter's chesed. Bekach misbata from boilet yoser shagadol oblig vul. That's a greater blig vul. That's a greater, unlimited, and infinite aspect of Hashem than breaking the rules of nature. V'zel achidah shel Shabbos Hagadol stam nes einay inyan shel gadol ba'avlata Yitzias Mitzrayim Kriyas Yamsuf. We don't call those nisim gadol because you don't see Hashem functioning in nature. Mosai nasa hanes gadol. That is gadol. That is considered great. That is the amazing power of the Eibishter.